Well guys, once again, working on the Miata. This thing is getting to be a routine. So we had some coolant leak out of the car. Hoses here were not leaking, but you noticed under this intake, there was a leak right above the oil filter. So if you look there, there's actually two hoses. One that goes to the back of the engine, I'll show you in a second. One that comes around and actually hooks up right here to this throttle body area. Right there. So it goes under. This one here is the one that goes towards the front. There's two connections, so connection in the front. The one that connects second towards the back goes around to the back of the engine. Hooks up in this car right there. You can see where it's at. You can kind of wiggle the hoses and figure out which one is which. This is what they look like. And what happened is the one in the back busted and started leaking. And my son was driving it, started getting hot, temperature gauge went up. Next thing you know, it's smoking because, you know, hot fluid was getting on the engine. Pulled over, couldn't figure out where it was leaking from. We brought it home. In this particular car, you have the radiator hoses, one on bottom, right there, one on top. But you also have those two hoses I just pointed out, plus right up here by the thermostat, you have one hose here and one hose there. So you got more than a few hoses that could go bad. Like I said, I'm pretty sure these are fairly new, so I'm gonna replace these two and those two that were underneath the intake. I went to my local auto parts store and they had no idea what I was talking about. All they showed was these hoses. So it may be a Mazda part or online, may have to look it up. Film it as I was doing it because it's impossible to film and do the job, but I'll show you kind of the tips that came across. So first I went ahead and emptied out the radiator. The other thing that I did was remove the cover because I did contemplate removing this intake, but that is a pain in the butt within itself. So I realized if I came in from the bottom, that would give me access to those hoses. So I removed the cover. It's basically 3 little screws towards the top and the front. There's a little nut, and then on the sides and back, side and back, there's a couple more bolts. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you drop that, you get access to the bottom of the car. There's a brace that actually goes, you see those two bolts right there? There's 2 bolts on top and 1 bolt on bottom. I'll show you. That bolt right there under the oil filter, that's the other part of the brace. If you remove that brace, it gives you a lot more access. Also, I removed the oil filter, and right now I just temporarily put it back because I'm waiting on parts. But by removing the oil filter, it gives you access to the hoses. The hoses are literally sitting right on top. So remove the brace and the oil filter. Of course, you're going to need a pan for the oil that drips out. Clean that area out and try not to get any fluid or debris in the engine where the oil filter sits. So this is the brace I'm talking about. 2 bolts sit on top, 1 bolt on bottom. If you remove this, I'll put the bolts back on so I wouldn't lose them. If you remove that and the oil filter, you'll have access to these lines. I actually came at the back line from the top, and let me show you what it worked real good for me. So I started out with these needle nose pliers, kind of long ones with a little bend to them, but then I realized this would work better. If you clamp it, then you don't have to try to wiggle and at the same time hold pressure on them. It just clamps on, and then you can gently use one hand to pull back while you wiggle with your other hand and kind of get the clamp off. If you're not familiar with the clamps, OEM look like this. So essentially you're clamping here, and by using this, you can keep pressure on them while you work it off. So removing the clamp off this backside, I was able to then use a small pick to work around and then pull on the hose. If you just yank on the hose, some of them will be pretty frozen on there, and you may end up with pieces of hose stuck to there, and now you got to work it off even more. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is the tool that I used. Anything will work that's similar, and basically I put the pick into the hose, worked all around it. Of course, you're kind of going by feel, kind of trying to get in there to break it loose. As I'm doing that, I was then pulling on the hose, and that helps break it loose so that you can get the hose off. Once I got that hose off, I tackled the other hose. Of course, I started with the easy sections. And like I said, this was easy. I clamped it, loosened it down, picked around it, pulled it down, came off right away. So now the hard part was getting into the other hoses. What I found best is one I tackled from the front, the other one I tackled from the back. So the one in the back that hooks up to the back of the engine, I came from underneath the car. Again, oil filter's removed. And if you've ever changed the oil in one of these cars, you know you kind of have to reach it from the backside here. I stuck my hand right there in that hole, reached towards the oil filter there, which was removed, and I looked at the clamp, and kind of by feel again, or kind of with one eye and at an angle, clamped onto that clamp with that tool I just showed you, and again wiggled it and pulled the hose off. The second one, the one towards the front, under the car from the front tire, got up under here on the front side, and you see how much more access I have since the brace is gone and the cover is gone, and the oil filter again was removed. And again, I clamped on to that little clamp and loosened it. Now on this one, I did use the needle nose pliers that don't clamp. I just couldn't get access to at the angle that the clamp was in to go in and lock it. So I just put pressure, wiggled it out, pulled the hose off, and that's how that one came out. Let me see if I can show you what they look like if I remove that oil filter. All right, right there with the oil filter removed, that angled one is the front one, the straight up one in the back goes to the back hose. I assume putting them back on is going to be just as much fun. But like I said, those are the two ways of reaching those, one from the front, one from the back. Both on the top can be reached from the top. And if you replace those, while you're at it, you might as well order you the front two hoses. If you haven't replaced your radiator hoses, you got one on top and one down here and bottom that goes around to the back right there. And you'd want to replace those as well, so you don't end up stranded on the side of the road like my son did. And that's pretty much the coolant hoses. A little bit of a pain to get to, but there you go. All right, guys, hope this helps. Hopefully we'll have some more fun videos and camping videos, but lately it seems like between expenses and breakdowns, this is what I spend my off time doing. I guess this is a 2004 Miata. I believe those hoses are pretty similar between 99 and 05. Please give me a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Y'all take care.